The late afternoon sun cast long, distorted shadows across the deserted stretch of highway as 18-year-old Ethan, clad in a worn-out leather jacket and headphones, skillfully maneuvered his vintage motorcycle. He was heading home, the familiar rumble of the engine a comforting counterpoint to the day's challenges. He'd had a long day at his martial arts dojo, pushing himself through hours of intense training and spar sessions, honing his skills in a discipline he took as seriously as a calling. The highway was usually quiet this time of day, a peaceful ribbon of asphalt winding through rolling hills, but today felt different, a subtle tension in the air that made the hairs on his arms prickle. He wasn't alone, and from the rearview mirror he noticed them, a pack of about 5 imposing motorcycles, their chrome gleaming menacingly in the fading sunlight. These were not recreational riders. Their leather jackets were adorned with intimidating patches, their machines more like intimidating beasts than transport. Their bikes closed the gap, their engines roaring, turning from a background hum to a threatening symphony. The lead biker, a hulking figure with a long braided beard and tattoos that snaked down his arms, pulled up alongside Ethan, his dark eyes smirking from behind mirrored sunglasses. He gestured towards Ethan's much smaller, older machine and spoke with a gravelly voice, laced with arrogance, taunting. "Looky here, boys, a little tadpole on that old thing. We need to show him how the real bikes run." This was clearly not a friendly encounter. The other bikers roared with laughter, encircling Ethan, their bikes effectively blocking him from moving. They revved their engines in his face, a blatant display of power and intimidation that sent a shiver down Ethan's spine, but not for the reasons they imagined. Ethan kept his hands on the handlebars, gripping them tight. He had faced bigger and stronger opponents in the dojo, but the sheer aggression of these men was still a concerning and unexpected variable. He tried to ignore their jeers and attempted to reason that if he kept his eyes down, they would eventually pass. Ethan maintained a calm exterior, although his mind was working overtime, calculating angles, escape routes, and the potential consequences of escalating the conflict. He had trained for years in various forms of martial arts, mastering not only physical techniques but also the art of control and situational awareness. He wasn't looking for a fight, but he wasn't about to be an easy target either, and the way they were pressing him gave him a strange feeling of being trapped in a game. The bikers continued with their insults, mocking his bike, his clothes, and his quiet demeanor, clearly relishing their ability to provoke him. One even reached out and grabbed his jacket, yanking him forward in a show of dominance. The lead biker then spat on the ground next to Ethan's boot and called him a pretty boy who has never seen a real challenge. This was more than just taunting. This was an attempt to degrade and dehumanize him, to make him feel small and helpless, and the whole ordeal made Ethan's blood boil with indignation. He recognized this for what it was and understood that a direct response would likely only escalate the situation further, but the burning of his anger almost made him give in to his inner violence. As they continued their harassment, Ethan tried not to let the rage show on his face. He kept his focus on the bikers' posture, the shifting weight on their bikes, looking for any opening or weakness. He knew that showing fear would only embolden them, but showing strength too early was equally ill-advised. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of exhaust and the simmering tension of a confrontation that was brewing with each passing second. He was determined to defend himself if necessary, and he knew that this situation wasn't going to de-escalate on its own. The lead biker took one step forward and said, "Let's see what you got, boy." The challenge in his eyes was very clear, and Ethan knew he had reached a point of no return. The lead biker's challenge hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown down, and Ethan knew that the moment of passive resistance had come to an end. His internal calm had been a carefully constructed wall, a facade behind which his practiced skills and controlled rage simmered. It was now time to take the offensive. With a movement so swift and unexpected that it caught the bikers off guard, Ethan released his grip on the handlebars, using the leverage to propel himself off the bike and into a spin. His foot connected with the lead biker's arm, his heel driving into his bicep with a force that echoed with a satisfying crunch. The biker roared in pain, his arm going limp, dropping the mirrored sunglasses to the asphalt. The other bikers, stunned by Ethan's speed and brutal counterattack, stumbled in their attempt to react. The confident smirks wiped off their faces and replaced with a mixture of shock and confusion, their bikes wobbling dangerously. Ethan didn't hesitate, his body moving with the practiced fluidity of years of training, transforming himself from a seemingly unassuming teenager into a whirlwind of controlled power. He launched into a series of swift, precise strikes, targeting the pressure points of the nearest biker. A palm heel to the jaw, followed by a sharp kick to the solar plexus, sent the biker reeling backward, gasping for air and clutching his stomach. The air was now thick with the sounds of grunts and yelps, as Ethan's every move carried the power of disciplined training. The tables had turned in an instant, and the bikers, who had minutes before been reveling in their dominance, were now the ones on the defensive, their coordination and bravado replaced by panicked reactions. One tried to swing a punch, wildly missing and opening himself up for a counter. Ethan deftly avoided the clumsy attack and with a swift movement, grabbed the biker's wrist, twisting it with painful precision, forcing him to drop the wrench he was holding. He moved with the grace and power of a predator, leaving no room for hesitation. The choreographed dance of violence was not just a random display of force. Every move was calculated, every strike purposeful. His years of practicing martial arts in his dojo weren't just for show. They had equipped him with the skills needed to control himself and his opponents in a way that was both effective and efficient. The bikers, who were used to intimidating and bullying their way through life, had clearly underestimated their opponent, having mistakenly believed his quiet demeanor was indicative of weakness. They had believed they were facing an ordinary boy, but they now understood that they had awoken a sleeping giant of martial prowess. The fight wasn't just physical. It was also a clash of ideologies. Ethan wasn't looking for a fight, but when provoked, he was more than capable of defending himself, and he was doing so with an intensity that surprised even himself. Another biker, trying to regain some sense of control, charged at Ethan from behind, but Ethan reacted with a fluid duck and weave, letting the biker's momentum carry him past him before delivering a leg sweep that dropped the man hard to the ground. The remaining bikers watched in disbelief as their comrades fell before them, their motorcycles becoming more of a liability than a tool of intimidation. The lead biker, his arm throbbing in pain, tried to regain his composure, his bravado now replaced by a mix of fear and rage. His face was red, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He was ready to fight Ethan by any means necessary. Ethan, having established dominance, had no intention of stopping now. He knew that hesitation could cost him this battle, and he pressed his advantage, his focused gaze never leaving his opponents. He used the biker's own size and weight against them, redirecting their attacks and exploiting their weaknesses. He understood that he could not waste time letting them regain their composure. The remaining bikers, seeing the tables turned so decisively, began to understand the true depth of their error. They had underestimated their target, and now they were facing the consequences of their hubris. Ethan hadn't only defeated them, he had shattered their perception of themselves. They were not the invincible bullies they had imagined themselves to be. They were just men who had made a very big mistake. The highway that had been filled with their roars of intimidation was now filled with their grunts of pain and defeat as Ethan continued his controlled assault.